Rappin with ReefBum is sponsored by Polo Reef, Champion Lighting and Supply, and GHL.
Hey, what's happening, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Rappin with ReefBum. I'm your host, Keith Berkelhamer. So, tonight I welcome back both Dr. Sanjay Joshi as well as Mike Paletta to the show. What's going on there, guys?
Joy in life, joy in spring.
I'm just getting ready to wind down the semester.
That's right. School is almost out.
Had my exams yesterday, and I just got to finish grading and assigning grades.
Another year in the books, perhaps, there, right? And then, yeah.
37 years.
How many?
Wow.
37.
Wow.
So you started when you were 12. Wow.
Almost.
Well, listen, I'm excited to have you guys on again. And I was saying before the show, both Julian and Charles want to have, they want to come on together with you guys, have a little smackdown. So we're going to have to find a mutual date for the four of you to do that. And that should be quite the show. But I think we got a lot of good conversation in store tonight. Just a brief background on both of these reef keeping legends. Sanjay has written many articles about reef keeping. He has been a speaker at several National Marine Aquarium Society meetings and local clubs. And as Sanjay referred to, in real life, he's a professor at Penn State of Industrial and Manufacturing Engineering. Mike, too, has written a lot of articles for many publications. He has also published 2 books, The New Marine Aquarium and The Ultimate Marine Aquariums. Mike's got a new ebook coming out. I'll let him talk a little bit more about that once we. Well, go ahead, Mike. You wanna plug the ebook?
Yeah, basically, thanks to the late James Lawrence, he suggested I do a follow-up on the New Marine Aquarium because after 20 years, things have changed. So I've pretty much been working on it for the past year. I hope to have it done by the end of May. I haven't titled it yet because the last thing you're supposed to do with a book is give it its title. But it's basically, I'm going to try and give all beginner reef keepers a nice background, a nice basis from which to work. And it's like teaching people chords on playing the piano. Once you know the chords, then you can play a lot of different music. The same thing here. Once you know the basics of reef keeping, then you can go on board. And the other thing I want to do with each book I sell, I plan on donating $1 to reef restoration. So to try and help out that way. It's also going to be relatively inexpensive. I'm going to do it as an ebook for roughly $16.99 a book. So
that reef restoration is going to be my tank. He's going to restore my reef.
yeah, I'm going to restore my reef.
Sanjay, your reef can restore your tank.
Blow pieces off.
Sanjay's tank can restore reefs.
Yeah.
Mike, when is this supposed to be coming out again?
I'm hoping to have it done by the end of May.
Cool. Mike has also been a speaker at many reef keeping conferences in the U.S. around the world, and he was also named the 2022 MASNA Award recipient. Before we start chatting with Sanjay and Mike, I want to take care of some business and thank the sponsors of this show. My sponsors are really important because they make the show possible with their support. So please support my sponsors. That means a lot. I want to continue to bring on awesome guests to help foster a learning environment on the show. Polo Reef is one sponsor. Make sure to check out Polo Reef's new YouTube video that drops this Friday, and the new Polo University episode. Andrew dives deeper into the details of ick and marine velvet. In this instructional and practice video, you'll learn what Polo Reef does to address these diseases. Make sure to subscribe to their YouTube channel at Polo Reef for video drop notifications. Champion Lighting and Supply. Besides being a place for hobbyists to purchase saltwater aquarium supplies online, Champion Lighting is also a wholesale distributor for many popular brands. If you own an aquarium store or an aquarium service company, contact Champion Lighting through their website at championlighting.com to set up a wholesale account. And my third sponsor tonight is GHL. I'm all in on using GHL products. I use their dosers, their controllers, Proflux controllers, Mitra's lights, KH Director, the whole suite of products. They produce high-quality German-engineered products. For more information or to purchase their stuff, you can visit aquariumcomputer.com/USA. You could also check out their stuff on my website at reefbum.com. And one more housekeeping thing. This is pretty cool. I don't know if you guys are ReefBum work shirt type of guys, but we are giving one of these things away during the live stream tonight. So
we have to fight over ours, Sanjay. It's between one of us gets one.
I already have his hat.
He's already got a ReefBum hat. So at some point during the live stream, I will give the details on how there'll be one lucky winner on the ReefBum work shirt. So stay tuned, stay glued to the live stream. So guys, what's going on with the reef tanks at this point? Any updates? Who wants to go first?
Well, basically, since we came on 2 months ago to talk about ammonium, I've probably had 150 people contact me about dosing it. Everything from sounds like the greatest thing possible to I'm really scared to do ammonia because I don't understand what fish are secreting in the tank. So after everyone has done it, I've only had like 3 comments of people saying, I didn't really see much of a difference. Everyone else has seen from their responses dramatic differences. I know Andrew Sandler was trying it at Polo Reef, one of your sponsors, and also who I'm going to be writing for from now on. And he said he increased his alkalinity by about 30% as a result of changing over to dosing ammonium. So on that size of tank, I can't imagine how much more alkalinity he has to dump in to match up with dosing the ammonium. But in the same thing, in my tank, I've seen a dramatic increase because I'm also doing that in combination with Claude Schumacher of Fauna Marin's bolus dosing of alkalinity. And I've increased my alkalinity consumption by 35%, my calcium consumption by 20%. But the curious thing is, I've seen corals that were growing side by side and kind of fighting with each other actually fuse into one another in a couple of instances, something I had not seen before. So the growth rate has gotten so quick that rather than fighting, they're just growing together, which I think is a rather unique thing to see in my tanks because I've not seen that before.
Mike, can you explain what the bolus system is, Claude's bolus system?
Basically, he's gone back to what we did in the early days of the hobby. When I say the early days, the late 80s, early 90s, when we started dosing things beyond Kalkwasser, before calcium reactors came out, we used to put buffer into the system. And in a lot of times in those days, we just did it as one bolus first thing in the morning. So he's gone back and reviewed what people were doing in Germany when the Berlin system came out and other things, and basically found that it's a much simpler system. And instead of using bicarbonate as the additive, he stresses the use of carbonate, basically baking soda. And what it does is you dose your full day's dose of alkalinity first thing in the morning, about approximately half an hour before the lights come on. The lights then gradually ramp up for half an hour, and then they run at full speed for 3 or 6 hours, however long you want to run them. And in that way, it seems to be more stable than dumping in Kalkwasser every hour, buffer alkalinity every hour, every 2 hours, every 3 hours. So it seems to produce a more stable state where the corals aren't constantly have to adjust. I have been using it for approximately the past 6 weeks. So it's still too early to say it's beyond what I was getting with the ammonium, but I am getting much faster growth with the two of them combined. And I shared with you that paper, as I shared with Sanjay, he already knew about it, that one of the corals tend to grow best when ammonium is present as well as bicarbonate. Those seem to be the limiting factors, and they seem to grow fastest when both of them are combined. So it kind of proves what he was talking about. I actually found the paper after I started using his system, so it gave me more validation that I was doing something correct.
So you're just seeing.
You see, I couldn't do that. I couldn't use that approach. My tank uses almost 3.5 DKH a day. I can't dump all of that at one time in the morning.
You don't need
it would
to.
It would spike the pH. It would spike the pH.
It spikes the pH a little bit, not dramatically, and then it gradually rises up over the course of the day. Your pH gets more stable over time with this system is what I've found. Where before my pH would start off at about 8.05. Now it starts off at about 8.1 and then peaks at about 8.3. So it's gradually brought it up and it's stabilized it.
So
that's overrated. To me, pH is so overrated. I mean, yes, it makes a difference. It makes a little bit of difference, but my pH at night drops to 7.8.
And
that's because you have so much photosynthesis going on in your tank that at night with everything you have. I mean, literally, I've seen your tank for 30 years.
I'm showing the video that Sanjay passed along today.
The last year, your tank has changed from being great to being so stupendous. And I say that, I don't say that lightly to kiss your ass, Sanjay, you know that. But the corals, there's literally spots where the fish used to swim through, where the corals have grown over. There's no place for the fish
You
to
cannot
swim.
see the rocks.
Oh, this.
You can't see the rocks. You can't see the holes in the rocks. You can't see anything but corals.
But I mean, what's crazy is like what's encrusting on the sides of the tank. You know,
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's just mind-boggling to me.
Yeah, there's a big, huge, what do you call that? Jedi mind trick Monty that covers
Oh, that's
almost 2/3 of the back
And
wall.
how do you have a Monty encrusting on top of the wet side of an MP40? I mean, how's that possible?
Yeah, it does.
Don't you clean it?
no.
I probably haven't cleaned that MP40 in like years. To me, I mean, those MP40s have been great. I mean, they just chug along.
I have to clean
No,
mine
I-
all the time.
Seeing his tank and looking, because you don't notice everything when you first look at his tank, but then you look behind the stuff, and then you see the stuff growing behind that's filled in every space and every spot. I mean, he doesn't get into detritus because all the detritus settles on the corals. There's no floor for anything to settle on.
Look
Literally.
at 20 years worth of detritus in my tank.
Yeah, because there's nowhere
What are
for
you
it to
talking
settle on. The
about?
corals eat it.
I haven't siphoned my sand. I don't do anything to my sand. It just detritus.
What's working the sand?
I don't know.
I mean, there's
listening to plumbers
there's
anymore.
no cleanup crew in there that's doing their thing in the sand.
There's some snails. The crabs.
You have those starfish too. You have all those red starfish and other starfish in
Yeah,
there.
but they don't get into the sand.
No, they don't get in, but they stir up the top. I mean,
Yeah,
you
they
have a
do the
deep
top.
sand bed. Your sand bed in its deepest spot is what, an inch, inch and a half?
No, in the back it's almost 3 inches.
Well, in the back, who can see the back?
But that's what it is.
Yeah, well,
It moved. It moved, right? The sand moved when I turned
Yeah.
my pumps on. It all moves. So yeah, in the back it's almost 3 inches deep. And in the front there, it's almost bare because there's too much flow for the sand to stay.
Well, life is found. It's kind of hard to say, but there's a lot of life in that tank, and
oh,
You know, it's interesting because for 2 years, last year things started to improve, right? 2 years before that, the tank was just in a lull. And things weren't growing. It was hanging in there. I was losing corals. And now it's turned around. And it's turned around and it's almost like, okay, I haven't grown for 2 years. Let me do all that 2 years worth of growth in 1 year now.
it's not simply turned around, Sanjay. It's surpassed what it was ever doing when it was at its best.
I went back to look at some old videos that I had. And I don't even recognize my old tank anymore. You know?
No, there's no free space.
Yeah, except for the fish. I go, oh yeah, I've had this fish for a while.
yeah, how long's the
But
tank
yeah.
been up?
Since 2006.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's
That's almost going to hit 18 years this
Wow.
year.
yeah.
Yeah.
So let's dig a bit deeper into the so Sanjay, you're saying that the bolus system would not be the thing for your tank just because of the high demand of the alkalinity and all that sort of thing. Mike, is
Your tank is unique, though, Sanjay. No one has the demand. I remember when you used to keep your nitrates at 90 and your alkalinity at 11 and your phosphates at 0.4, and your stuff was still growing, but it's not even still growing as fast as it is now. That's what's
So
about
now
amazing.
definitely, I think it's growing faster than where it used to grow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
so Sanjay, you're still doing the ammonia dosing, correct? Yep.
Yeah. I've since tripled my
It's
dose.
tripled.
You're doing 120 milliliters a day now?
I'm at 120 milliliters a day of that mix that, 20 grams in 2 liters.
Yeah.
And I dump 120 ml of that every day now.
Yeah, I'm up to 75 milliliters.
I mean, I hit a point in March where I was away for spring break and I came back and the nitrates had completely gone to zero. I lost a few frags here and there when that happened. And then I started raising it and I said, instead of raising it with nitrates, again, I'm going to keep raising the ammonia level slowly and see if I can raise the nitrates that way. And now it sits comfortably around 5 parts per million nitrates. And I still do carbon dosing.
How much are you dosing carbon a day?
It's about I don't know. I should redo that math. But that's what I use to kind of, if it starts, the nitrates start to creep up.
Put in.
Huh?
You're doing vodka. How much vodka are you dumping in?
I don't know. At this point, I haven't kept track of it. Because this is what happens, right? You have the app and you can adjust the dosing pump. And when my nitrates start to go up, I increase the vodka dosing, bring the nitrates down, and bump up the ammonia is what I've been doing.
Yeah, that sounds like a fine line there. It's like how do you find that sweet spot between carbon dosing and the ammonia dosing? And
I think carbon dosing is good for the tanks. I don't know. Again, this is one of the things that I never used to do before. If you ask me what have I changed, since the last 2 years when I had struggles, and I did go to carbon dosing to bring the nitrates down, and I kept doing that. I brought the nitrates down from all those ridiculously high numbers down to like 5 now, or even 0 at some point. So yeah, those are the major changes that I've made, and I just try to keep the numbers a little more reasonable now. There's a lot of literature that shows that high nitrates retards coral growth, even though it may not kill the corals, but it does seem to retard coral growth. Also, it affects things at higher temperatures a little bit more, the high nitrates. And my tank will get into 82, 83 in the summer. Yeah.
Temp-wise, yeah.
Yeah.
I want to ask a question from a viewer here. Cristiano Frad. Does it make sense to dose ammonia even if my nitrates are around 5? Understand that if I have nitrates means that I have enough organic load, correct?
Yeah, but maybe corals seem to prefer ammonia over nitrate.
Over nitrate. They consume it much faster. It's much more easily, for lack of a better term, digestible. It's consumed and converted with requiring less energy by the corals than a nitrate is. Nitrate requires 2 reactions. Ammonia consumes basically 1. So it's less energy consuming. So it's more nutritious for the corals.
So would you say in that instance, if you've got 5 part per million in terms of the nitrates, do you think it's if that person is not doing any dosing, let's say of nitrates, do you think ammonia dosing is going to make sense for that sort of tank?
I would do the ammonia dosing, see what happens to the nitrates. If they go up, I would increase my carbon dosing to bring them down. That allows you to keep adding ammonia.
It also depends on the stocking of the tank. I don't recommend ammonia dosing if you just have like a dozen frags in the tank. It seems to work best when you have some decent amount of biomass and corals there, rather than a small amount of frags. Then you bump up the nitrates. I've had a couple people do that where they were starter tanks and started using ammonia trying to get the frags to grow faster. All they did was bump up the nitrate levels and bump up the algae growth.
I mean, that's what happens when you cycle the tanks in the beginning, right?
Yeah.
Essentially, we're taking ammonia and converting that to nitrates to cycle the tank. Now, with that much coral growth, I mean, not growth, but that much coral in the tank, right? The coral can use up a lot of that stuff.
Do you think, I don't want to say reef keepers in general, but do you think there is an overemphasis in terms of trying to get corals to grow faster? Are some reef keepers kind of going down that rabbit hole in terms of trying to expedite growth?
Sure, if you want to frag and sell corals, that's a great way to go.
Yeah, and also when you're getting faster growth, you tend to get better colored corals. I mean, there's nothing better than growth tips and colorful corals.
And if you're like me, who just wants to grow the coral, then that's a good thing to do.
Yeah. No, since we don't sell corals, our goal isn't to grow them to sell them. Our goal is to grow them because we enjoy seeing big full colonies rather than frags. I mean, I don't care if you look at a Bally Slime or a big full colony like he has in his tank versus a tiny frag of a home wrecker. I would much prefer the big green Bally Stag as a big full colony. It's much more impressive. And I don't spend a lot of time 1 inch away from the corals in my tank. I sit in my chair and look at them from 4 or 5 feet away. I like the things that are impressive that I can see from across the room, rather than something I need a microscope or something else to be able to see the colors on.
I mean, yes, I mean, growth comes with its own set of problems, right?
Well, one of the reasons why you've tried to grow them is you wanted to grow them to such a size that you would see spawning, correct?
Well, that's my goal this year, right? So back in January, one of the things I did after talking to Rich and Jimmy Craig, and yeah, I mean, I've been dangling my feet over this over several years, but now with the ability with the MXM module to run my radions, I can put the spawning cycle on the apex. So that's what I did in January. I said, let me just put the tank on this spawning cycle with the lunar cycle and temperatures and everything else. And I'm just going to keep maintaining my tank the way I do every time, right? So I'm not changing anything else. And I want to see if that would get them to the point where they might spawn. So we'll see. I'm not running it all total darkness, you know, I'm doing all of those things yet, right? I've got enough stray light, you know, sometimes I forget to turn off the room lights when I should be and things like that. But I'm running my tank like I normally run it. And it's going through its ups and downs too, right? So I had my nitrates went too low. Some Montes bleached.
Yeah.
They're coming back, but they did bleach. So that puts a lot of stress on the corals too. So I don't know if that'll affect the spawning at some point or not. The alkalinity, you know, when you're consuming that much alkalinity a day, you're out of town for 2-3 days and something goes wrong, there's not much you can do. It comes crashing down.
But corals are really.
Have you also seen strontium in your calcium levels consumption increase as well? Not as much, but some.
I'm sure it did. Yeah, I mean, calcium has to increase if alkalinity is increasing. Yeah.
What?
Strontiums, I can never keep the strontium levels high. So I just do, just dump strontium once a week and let it go.
What are you guys keeping your calcium and alkalinity at these days?
Mine runs close to 9 DKH, and then calcium 420, 430, 390, whatever, it just moves around a little bit more.
Yeah, I keep my calcium at 450 and my alkalinity is around 7.8 to 8.
Yeah. A question back to the ammonia. Rich Colombo was asking, what source of ammonia are you guys dosing?
Amazon ammonium bicarbonate.
I've been using ammonium bicarbonate.
Ammonium bicarbonate.
Yeah, Amazon's. Yeah.
I mean, I've tried ammonium hydroxide too. You just can't buy ammonium nitrate, so that's a good thing, I guess.
Yeah.
You don't want to use ammonium nitrate.
They'll come to your house,
nitrate
Sanjay, you do that.
Mike.
You get the FBI knocking on your door if you buy too much.
Yeah, blue lights and ammonium nitrate. Yeah, they're coming to your house.
Mike, how's it going with the concoction?
I quit playing with that for a while. I'm playing with it on one separate tank, and it seems to do well, particularly on the LPS tank. I mean, you can see the Gonioporas feeding. You can see increased tissue growth in the euphyllias. So in that regard, I'm pretty pleased with it. Because I'm doing this other stuff in the SPS tank, I'm not feeding it as aggressively as I am the LPS tank.
So you kind of put the brakes a little bit on the concoction in the big tank?
I stopped everything for a month just so I could have a basis from which to start. Yeah. And going back and adding the ammonium and the bolus method a month ago, I have seen an increase, but I then also started doing the concoction in a separate tank. And I'm seeing good things with the LPS. The next thing I'm going to try it on is the SPS tank that's attached to it.
Sanjay, have you been playing with that at all? No.
No.
Does it scare you?
I just feed I feed, no, it doesn't scare me, but I feed the Benepets, Reefroids, and a lot of some of the particulate foods, the frozen ones.
You also have a ton of
frozen
fish heavily. So you have a ton of fish waste feeding the corals as well. I mean, you have a ton of fish in your tank.
Yeah. I don't think my corals are starved.
No.
No, not at all.
No.
But I mean, so Mike, is there any concern in terms of the whole potential of pathogenic bacteria that potentially could get stirred up using the concoction?
If you start with everything pure and clean, then there's very limited chance. And it's the same thing of adding carbon dosing. I mean, if you have a ton of pathogenic bacteria in your tank and you carbon dose, you have the potential for causing a nightmare there. So it's not any different. It's just a different means. But like I said, if you start off clean, and I mean, I know Alan Vo recommends everything RODI. I run everything through a microwave to kill off anything that could be pathogenic. So in that regard, I'm not worried about that aspect of it.
Yeah, I think there's just been a lot of discussion about that in the YouTube and podcast world in terms of the concoction and all the different nuances on that stuff. So it's certainly seems to be an emerging type of thing that I think we're all still trying to get our heads wrapped around it in terms of all the different variables that are in play.
Yeah, it's funny because
to me the question always is why.
Faster growth.
Unless, okay, now if you don't have enough light in your tank and your corals are not getting enough food, then maybe yes, you want to give them food in some other way, right? So our first question you should ask is, are my corals not getting enough food?
Yeah, I mean,
nobody's asking that question.
The things I'm amazed by is how this year there's been a stress on coral nutrition and coral diseases, where they were sort of neglected. I mean, we didn't really understand, but now everybody's kind of on the bandwagon. Yeah, we need to provide better nutrition. Yeah, we need to understand these diseases better. And what's funny is it'll be the hobbyists that understand this stuff typically more than the scientific community.
Yeah, but the approach seems to me right now is like, oh, let's throw all this concoction of antibiotics at this thing and hope something sticks.
Well, antibiotics is a whole nother.
That's the approach people are taking
the
for
KFC
diseases,
dip,
right? Whatever dip you want to do, it's a concoction of antibiotics. I don't think that's the right way to do it, right? And again, it's one of those things. If my coral was dying and I threw all these dips at it and it stopped dying, did the dips prevent it from stopping dying, or that's just the natural phase of that thing that it stopped?
Well, having worked in infectious disease,
right? I mean, you got to convince people that yes, okay, I can deliberately infect them with whatever it is, and then I can take this antibiotic and cure it.
Now, see, you're working from the wrong premise. You're working from the premise of people that haven't worked with antibiotics. Antibiotics are not designed to kill off everything. All they're designed to do is bring the pathogens down to a low enough level to allow your own or whatever's body's defenses to fight them off. Antibiotics, you can't keep someone alive with a major pathogen in their system just by constantly feeding them antibiotics if their immune system's shot. Your immune system eventually, the same with corals. If the corals are stressed and not healthy, you can dip them, you can run them in a microwave, you can do whatever you want to them. You're not going to kill off the pathogens long term unless you get the coral's immune system up to par. Using an antibiotic is a short-term, sometimes necessary mechanism or remedy for a symptom. It's not a cure. That's the error that people make that don't understand antibiotics. I worked in infectious disease for 40 years. We all knew that there were no perfect antibiotics. Otherwise, everyone would be walking around with an IV tube with an antibiotic in so they never got sick. That doesn't happen. You only use an antibiotic short term to allow the body's immune system to bounce back or recover or be strong enough to fight the pathogens. It's the same with the corals. Like I said, if your corals are stressed, you may save them for the short term, but if you don't get rid of the stressor, the pathogens will eventually win.
So what is the stressors?
Stressor could be major bumps in temperature, major bumps in alkalinity or salinity, fish picking at them, acro-eating flatworms, other pathogens. There's a zillion different things that can stress them. Obviously, one thing typically isn't a stressor. It's usually a combination of things. You usually don't have one thing that wipes out a whole tank. It's usually a number of things. And I mean, I wrote an article on this probably 4 years ago. Corals do not die for no reason. There's always a reason. I've never seen a coral commit suicide. Unlike a fish, which jumps out of every small hole, the corals aren't climbing out of the tank to die. Corals die because there's a mechanism that causes them to die. The goal that we have to have is, what is the mechanism and how do we resolve it?
Well, scientists can't resolve it yet. They don't understand it.
No, they don't. I mean, if you understand,
So we're just shooting in
corals
the
roughly
dark.
40 years, we don't understand human fighting of diseases, and we've been studying that for 200 years. So, I mean, I don't expect us to do it in 40 years.
And there's more money in human diseases than there'll ever be in coral disease.
Well, unless all the coral reefs wipe out, and then they'll be even worth more. But no.
What can we do with our tanks in terms of being proactive to keep a tank from succumbing to those kind of diseases? I mean, probiotics. Is that something that we should all be thinking about?
I don't know whether we should all be thinking about, but there needs to be a set of people who understand this stuff, who should think about it.
I mean, from my point of view, is trying to keep things.
I mean, that doesn't mean if somebody's thinking about it and talking about it and sounds like a good idea that we should just arbitrarily be dumping all this stuff in our tank too.
Yeah, I mean, there should be a group of people that are testing different things to try and find remedies and find cures. But for the average hobbyist, stability. Try to keep things as stable as you can.
Yeah, it's all about stability for the most part.
I mean, during COVID, I was constantly monkeying around with my tanks, and I spent more time doing stuff, and I lost more stuff because of constantly changing things than I have since I've stabilized things and gotten things to calm down. So, I mean, I'm an even bigger advocate of stability than I ever was.
Yeah, I mean, little things can change. I was looking at my soft coral tank the other day, and I said, these corals are not getting enough flow. Let me increase I messed with the flow rates, right?
Yeah.
The next day, one Ophelia just crapped out.
I'm showing your soft coral tank video.
Yeah. So, just even little changes like that, we don't know what impact it has, right? There was a perfectly healthy Ophelia the day before. And then it gets brown jelly and it's gone.
How much did you increase the flow?
Yeah, about 20-30%.
Yeah, that's
that red.
a lot.
But the directions change, right?
Yeah, I know.
Just
We should have done it like
increases the
5% and then gradually do that. Change it to 30%.
With the colliding currents and everything, the water flow probably to it changed. And that was enough to cause one of them to die. But if one of them is dying, I'm not dumping antibiotics into that tank.
No, that wouldn't.
Oh, I got brown jelly. Now I got to put antibiotics in there. Right, it's one coral. It's dead. It's gone. Move on. I'm not destroying my tank and dumping antibiotics just for that because one coral died.
No, we've actually talked about that. It's how many people do we know that have a tank full of flourishing corals? One coral shows problems and dies. They changed the entire tank because that one coral died, without understanding why it died, and B, everything else suffers as a result of doing that. We've seen countless people do that, and it's insanity.
Yeah. 100 plus corals in a tank. One dies, don't panic.
No, move one from that's growing into the other one into that spot.
You got one coral that dies, and then a few weeks later you got another one that let's say dies on you. Then there's a pattern. Then
if you start to see a pattern, then you know something's there.
Then you got to do something. In terms of talking about stability and doing stuff to the tank and tinkering and all that stuff, one rule of thumb for me is like, if my corals are looking good, my tank is looking good, why even experiment? Why play around with stuff? It's just not worth it.
No, I've learned that the hard way.
You want to get better. You want that more growth. You want that more color. You want more.
That's the nature of the hobby, though. Everyone has been down that road. I want more. It's incrementalism.
That's what you got.
The only thing we're going to do right now is you may incrementally improve something 2% or 5%. You're not going to have the breakthrough like you did when you switched from a trickle filter to a protein skimmer, or from fluorescent tubes to halides. Those days are pretty much over. We can keep just about everything alive. We can grow it. We can get to be as colorful as possible, but we still want more. What we have to do is be satisfied with what we have and try to convince people of that. I'm one of those people that's never convinced of that, but that's what we need to do.
You're just telling people that you got 30% more growth.
I know that. They're going home, and then Amazon's lines are lighting up right now with people buying ammonium bicarbonate. But that's...
We got a question about that, but I want to thank Rob, Upstate New York, for that generous super chat. Thank you, Rob. Thanks, Keith. Always a great chat with my two favorite speakers. Rich Colombo. Keith, curious on the amount of ammonia bicarbonate that they're dosing. How many grams per gallon or whatever would be a good starting point in a nutrient-heavy system?
Like I said, first of all, you get your nutrients down before you do any of this stuff. Right? Get it to the point where you can manage the nutrients.
When we say get them down, get your nitrate to around 5, although I've seen people have success with this with it less than 10, and get your phosphate to 0.1 or less. And then,
get the numbers down, because that's important. If things start to go haywire, then you suddenly, you put yourself in a situation where things are not good.
Are you guys looking for a certain ratio of nitrates to phosphates when you're doing the ammonia bicarbonate dosing?
I've never looked at those ratios.
I still like the 100-to-1 nitrate to phosphate. Because
to me, it just kind of doesn't make sense, because right now my phosphates might be 0.13, right?
Your tank
then that means I have to
you have to understand that no one has a tank like yours. There's not a person. I've seen thousands of tanks. There's not another tank like yours.
Coral growing.
You could be Dick Parent and peeing in the tank, putting in the ammonia. We would never know. But you have something that you're doing that no one else is.
What is it? I don't know what it is.
I don't know what
you're
it is.
A coral whisperer.
I mean, 3 decades. I don't have any secrets. I tell people what I'm doing. Right? There's no secrets.
Full spectrum lighting.
Right? Full spectrum lighting. People don't want to listen to me when I say that.
I mean, I've been doing it now for.
You want growth. You're not getting it with blue lighting.
8 channels, 100%, 8 hours a day.
Yeah, I mean, it's back to photosynthesis.
When you look at his tank in the daytime, it's like looking at the sun. It's as bright as being out on a reef.
I mean, that's how the corals live in the wild.
Yeah, but you've been on a reef. I've been on a reef. There's no reef that looks like your tank. There's no tank as colorful as your tank.
Yeah, I mean, we select the corals.
Yeah, I know that.
Right? We select them for color. We select them for lots of different things, shapes, and they may not occur in the wild in small regions where you have hundreds of different corals, right?
But
you go out in the reef and there's, fields of staghorns.
Fields of brown corals, let's be honest.
Bigger than my house. So, it's a different environment. A very different environment.
And you're also, even though you're running all channels, you're still probably running more blue light than most of these corals are getting in the wild. So that is also changing the colors. I mean, when all the whites and the reds and greens are on, you don't see the blue fluorescing of the corals. But when you bring those down at night, I mean, the first time I saw your tank at night with nothing but the blues on, I mean, it was the most spectacular colored tank I've ever seen.
Yeah, I mean, the fluorescence is there.
Yeah.
It's just not there in the day when the lights are on. Yeah, it's just masked by the stronger light. It doesn't mean it's not there.
I saw this question, I think, last week from Chris at ACI, and I'm sorry, Chris, I didn't bring this up, but getting back to the ammonia bicarbonate dosing conversation, Chris is asking, why not dose ammonium chloride?
Sure,
you can. It's the ammonia is the critical component. It could be hydroxide, it could be bicarbonate, it could be chloride, just not ammonium nitrate because they come to your door. Other than that, you're good.
I mean, the only thing with chloride is you're adding more chloride ions in there. If you're adding 2 part, then you're already increasing your sodium and chloride anyway. You always need bicarbonate, so add a little bit of bicarbonate with it. We're not adding that much ammonia.
No.
It's really small amount.
20 grams to a 2-liter bottle, and from that you're taking
30, 40, 50
liters a day. I'm doing 75. but Sanjay's doing 120 milliliters out of it. Do the math real quick, Sanjay. How many grams is that? That's less than a gram of ammonium a day.
Yeah, it's less than that.
I mean, so you're not adding a ton of ammonium. And
No, you're
you
not.
shouldn't do it as a bolus, though. You should do it over the course of 4 or 6 doses a day, because that reduces the likelihood. I mean, I've done testing where I added the full bolus, and it was consumed roughly an hour later. When I do it in small amounts, it's gone in 15, 20 minutes. I mean, there's zero reading of ammonia then using a HANA test kit or a HANA reader.
Plus, you want to do ammonia dosing in the daytime when your lights are on.
Yeah.
Because that's when photosynthesis takes place, and that's when those anthelia are going to use ammonia. So there's no point in doing it in the dark.
Do you guys have that set up on a doser?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I've gone from being anti-doser for a long time to now I've got 10 Versas running on my tank.
Well,
Yeah.
you're away a lot, right? Both of you guys are away.
Not on that tank. I mean, total.
Yeah.
All my tanks now. Total, all my tanks, I put dosers on these.
Yeah, I have 3 cameras on my big tank and cameras on all my other tanks.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think dosers were one of the best things in the hobby, as long as you know to prevent accidents with them.
No, and as long as you can monitor them, like if I see something, I can shut that doser off and it doesn't have to be added.
I always dilute whatever I add.
Yeah.
And that way, even if an accident happens, I'm not going to kill the tank.
And a very critical thing is doser maintenance. You got to stay on top of that stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Because of that doser
Those
fails.
tubes, those tubes don't last that long.
No,
I mean, on my calcium reactor, I use a doser to feed the calcium reactor. And within a month, the output of that calcium reactor is almost
poor
dropped by
dosing
half.
pump, Sanjay. I mean, that thing's got to be cranking like going
Yeah,
crazy.
it's running at
It's like an outboard
it's
motor.
running at full speed. The Versa is running at its maximum speed.
You should get Vitamixes to do the dosing. So
I think,
you should get Vitamixes to do your dosing.
But see, again, with the calcium reactor, I don't want to dose way too much because then I'm adding CO2.
So, you guys briefly mentioned this in terms of antibiotics. In the current edition of Coral Magazine, which just came out, the May edition, there's a whole bunch of stuff in there about coral disease and treating it, and there's now some protocols that are in public for oxalinic acid in terms of dips and in-tank treatments. What do you guys think about that?
I think what Chris did it the right way, right? They got a veterinarian involved. They had, the University of Florida's extension people. I think it was them that was involved, right? And they ran experiments and they did controlled experiments and so on before saying, hey, let's just dump all this stuff in there, right? So at least there's some systematic approach that they use to reach this point. Right. And again, if you are of the mindset that you should be hitting tanks with antibiotics every month just to prevent any diseases, like a lot of people have started doing, I don't think that's a good idea.
Yeah. No, I mean, oxalic acid is the same class as quinolones as Cipro. It has a broad spectrum. And actually, Jake was talking about using this 2 years ago. So they've been working on this. Chris has been working on this with Jake and others for a long time. I mean, no one is an advocate of antibiotics should be used prophylactically on everything, and no one is an advocate that you should be dumping it in your tank all the time. But when you get to the point where you have the potential to lose thousands or tens of thousands of dollars of corals, and you don't have any other option, it is a viable option to look at. And the odds of you developing resistance doing a once or twice treatment and having it exposed to UV light, which breaks down most antibiotics, is pretty slim. So that concern that they're developing resistance is a moot point. It really doesn't occur when you're using something that's given out 200 million doses a year, Cipro are given out. There's probably a lot more likelihood that other people are getting it than us dosing our aquariums with it.
I think it also makes sense for somebody like Chris, who runs a wholesale facility. They import a lot of corals, right? And the amount of losses can be huge for them. So I think that it's important for them to try and control that. And if they can control the disease and they sell corals that are healthy, that's good for the hobby too.
Well, the interesting thing, though, last week your guests talked about using oxalic acid to treat cyano versus using chemiclean. And basically, they found that the bacterial spectrum was much broader and diverse after using oxalic acid than it was after using chemiclean, which has been used by virtually everybody at some point when they've had cyano. So I thought that was a really interesting finding, at least as interesting as what they found from dosing to treat their corals. At least we know if you dose the tank with oxalic acid, odds are your bacteria come back are going to be a diverse group rather than just one or two bacteria that are left.
Yeah, but what's also interesting is that even after erythromycin or chemiclean, right, it did change the bacterial composition, but it recovered. It's not like it was lost, right? And I don't think he had another image that showed, okay, here's what it looks like now and 3 months from now, from after my treatment. It came back to what it was originally. You know? It's not like you've lost it all. And there seems to be a tendency for these things to come back, right? And if they're coming back in roughly the same ratio, it's a little blip in your ecosystem. If you're that desperate to get rid of cyano, I mean, I let it go in my system. You know, small patches of cyano show up on and off. I don't do anything with it. They eventually go away. You know, and sometimes they might get out of hand, right? And if it gets really out of hand, where it's all over the rocks and all over the sand, and all I'm seeing is red, then I'm going to hit it with something stronger.
Well, what's interesting also about the use of antibiotics or the use of anything, and then the recurrence of what you had initially, in medicine, it's what's called the fertile ground hypothesis. That is, you've treated the symptom, but unless you've changed the ground in some way, you've changed your parameters, you've changed what was the source, it's going to come back. That's how nature is. If the conditions are the same and all you've done is cause a spike to kill it, and the same conditions are there, it's going to come back. What you have to do when you do that is figure out what is causing that to occur. Are you overfeeding the tank? Is there a big detritus pile that's causing the cyano to grow? Do you have inadequate flow? Is your light bulbs 10 years old or whatever? There is some reason why it's recurring. You have to make the changes. Nothing drastic, because that can be just as bad, but you want to keep the tank stable, but you want to make the changes necessary to alleviate what caused the problems.
Yeah, the other interesting thing that people don't talk about is sometimes when you kill cyano using chemiclean or any other chemical methods you want to use, right? When that cyano is gone, oftentimes there'll be a breakout of a different algae.
Yep.
Opens a door.
Because now all that dying stuff has released whatever it was capturing and holding, and something has to take its place, try and consume that. Right? And oftentimes people find there'll be algae breakouts. Sometimes even dinoflagellates will grow.
That's happened to me.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mike, I want to point out Andy, who was on last week with Eli, wants to clarify something. He was using the post chemiclean thing for cyano, and he showed the oxalic acid was to treat STN. So it wasn't to treat the cyano. That was for STN. So yeah, he was basically showing that you know, the chemiclean did impact the microbiome in a negative way.
Well, it's going to kill all the bacteria. I mean, all the gram-negative bacteria or positive, whatever it works with. It's going to kill them all, right? It's not going to be that selective and say, I'm only going to kill the ones that cause cyanobacteria. No. When I used to dose cyanobacteria dose chemiclean once in a while in my tank, I had some photosynthetic sponges.
The old purple sponge.
And they would die because they were photosynthetic because they harbored cyanobacteria in them. And that's the way I actually got rid of one of the sponges. It had grown too much and I couldn't get rid of it. And a treatment with ChemiClean killed it.
Did you dose typically bacteria when you did the ChemiClean treatments, or you just let the bacteria naturally come back?
I've never dosed bacteria other than somebody gives me a sample of something and says, try this, it's going to make your tank really awesome. And I go,
Really?
okay,
You
I'll
do
give it a
that?
shot.
You dump something in when the tank
I
is
do
really
that.
looking rocking?
He
Yeah, I want to
used
see
to
how
do
much
that.
more it's
Ah, yeah,
lost,
you
right?
can't do that now, Sanjay.
You can't do that now.
that's-
You're on a roll.
Hey, you need to know what the tipping point is,
Oof.
right? So you push, 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 and see where the tipping point is.
Who are you, and what have you done with Sanjay? This is the guy that told
There's
me
a value to knowing the limits.
you push it to the limit.
I didn't know your tank was an experiment.
It's always been an
All our
experiment.
tanks are experiments.
Mine has always been an experiment.
Yeah, mine have definitely always been experiments. That's what's kept me interested, is trying and finding something new.
Yeah. You know, I don't do totally random experiments, and I kind of try to control my experiments, so at least I can get something useful out of it, right? Like, for example, when I was having this whole issue with RTN for a while, it would happen every year. There'd be a point in spring when I would get this RTN, and again, you ask people about how do I deal with RTN, you're going to get 1,000 different responses, right? I'd never got an answer that said, don't do anything. So I said, fine, I'm going to try that. I'm just going to not do anything. Worst case, it'll wipe out every coral in my tank, and I'll hit my friends for new corals, and I'll restart it up, right? And I'll let it go. So that'll give me a data point on, okay, what if you do nothing? Sure enough, it stopped. I did nothing. I said, I'm not doing anything. Let it go. Take whatever it wants. So it gives you information, right? So it's the same thing. How much can I push my tank? Right? And at what point is it going to reach the tipping point? Now, all this messing around might affect my coral spawning, which is another story.
Yeah. But you've only wasted 4 months, so what the heck?
It's hard for me to just not do anything it's hard to do because the alkalinity fluctuates so much, right? 3 DKH is a lot of alkalinity in one day. You're gone for the weekend, doing your doser, something gets stuck in the pipe and, it's not dosing the right amounts, and you all of a sudden you're away on the road and you see the alkalinity dropping. You crank up your dosing pump and still nothing happens, and you go, okay, now I'm cooked because I have no other way of changing the alkalinity.
Here's a tip, Sanjay. Get another Versa doser, attach it to a secondary dosing of alkalinity. So if the first one goes, you got a second one to feed it, so you don't go down to nothing.
Why do you think I have 10 dosers?
Well, you finally do redundancy.
Yes.
We've talked about redundancy for 20 years.
I know. That's why I did that. So now I'm going to use 2 pumps.
Speaking of redundancy, what should people have on hand as a spare? Top 3 things.
Anything that's going to cause your system drastic impact. So, for example, lighting. Right? I've got 8 lights on my tank. One goes out and it takes me 3-4 days to get it. It's no big deal. Right? But if my circulation pump dies, and that's my only source of water flow, then I'm in trouble.
Yeah.
Right? So I kind of look at it that way. Go, okay, what is it that my tank can live without for 3 days? Right? And those are the things that I'm not going to keep spares because I can always order it and get it in 3 days. Okay? But there are things that, this I'm going to have to keep spares.
Good.
So if my circulation pump dies tomorrow, I'm still okay because I've got 3 MP60s, I've got MP40, I've got other things running, and there'd be enough circulation in the tank. It just won't go through my sump, right? So then I look at, okay, what is it going to impact if no water going through my sump? Okay, skimmer. Takes water from the sump and dumps it back in the sump. Will my tank survive without a skimmer for 3 days, a week? Easily. So I have this, in my head, I have these categories, and I go, this is the most critical to me. And it reached the point where the dosing pumps became a critical item because the alkalinity drops are huge.
Yeah, you need to have that. And my point of view is you could have your lights off for 3 days for a blackout, turn them on, your corals are fine. Your skimmer goes out for 3 days, the pump on it, for a week, you're fine.
Yeah.
But if you turn off the circulation in your tank for 12 hours, your corals will start to suffer. So always have extra power heads on hand.
Heaters in wintertime.
Yeah. Heater's important.
And I recommend that anyone that lives where their power can go out for more than 12 hours have a generator.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I mean, they're not that expensive. I mean, they're probably 5 or 6 frags. So, you know, you should get them.
Do both of you guys have generators?
Yeah.
I don't.
You don't? Whoa.
No.
Sanjay lives as dangerously as you can.
You don't even have like a little like gas-powered pull-start backup generator type of thing? Nothing?
I have a few batteries I can plug my pumps into, you know, keep the water
So what
circulation.
happens if you're away for 2 weeks and you lose the power for, you know, God forbid, for 24 hours or something like that? Are you coming back
He already
home?
told you. It's
24 hours does nothing.
Contact his friends, we give him new corals. It's easy.
I've done this, okay? This is, again, I run little simulations on my tank, right? I have done this. I said, I want to see how long I'm comfortable without power. And I shut off all the power to my tank. And I started up a couple of power heads and kept those moving. And I said, you know, let me see if I can go 2-3 days and see what happens.
You're going to do one of those simulations now?
I'm doing it
Would
now.
you?
I've done it. I could still do that.
Given the state of the tank right now, you would put it through a...
Yeah, I mean, right now I have a good understanding of what's
test?
going to happen. I have a good understanding of it. But yeah, putting us through a stress test is important. Controlled stress test. I think everybody should know the limits of their system.
Yeah, it's like having a sump and you turn
I mean, you
off the
have
power.
a-
You want to see if the
you
water's
have a
gonna
coral
overflow.
reef
You have to
tank.
do that.
What people don't realize is the amount of oxygen that the bacteria consume. I mean, you go one night in a reef tank without flow, like your fish will be dying.
The fish will die.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've seen it happen with friends who were moving tanks, right? And what they did was they said, oh, I've got this rock in this bucket. I'm going to grab my fish and put it with the rock. 3 hours later, all the fish were dead. You know, and it's the bacteria consuming up all the oxygen.
Vinny,
It's a tremendous load. Even the other thing I tell people if they're really concerned about things is get one of these battery-operated pumps, air pumps, that kicks in when power dies, and drop it in your tank. Right? I mean, I raise clownfish, and I had at one time 300 clownfish in a 10-gallon tank. Right? So they're jam-packed. 10 minutes is enough to get them all gasping at the surface or laying on their side. Yeah, it's amazing how fast oxygen gets consumed with some of these
Vinny
things.
from Vince Finn says car battery and inverter is a great cheap backup. That's true. You got to be there though.
Yeah.
You got to be there. But these days you can get auto switching. Get a UPS system. I mean, some of these UPS systems are great.
Yeah. Rich Colombo, the Ecotech Flow battery backups are great. Yeah, that's a great piece of equipment to have. Yeah, I use generators. I mean, I've got a full house backup generator, and then I've also got a portable propane generator just as a backup to that, just in case. So, and I'm a little paranoid.
Again, I keep my fingers crossed.
Yeah.
I've lived in this house. I've lived in this house for 31 years. Okay, and the longest I've lost power has been 3 hours. And that's once. Once.
Yeah, fortunately, all our utilities are underground, which makes a big difference. If your utilities are above ground or nearby, you definitely need to have a generator and have backup. If your utilities are underground, it makes a huge difference.
But the first time when it happened, the 3-hour period, it was in winter time, and I wasn't sure when the lights were going to come on, and here I was grabbing every comforter I could find to kind of wrap my tank around to prevent heat loss. My wife is like, "What are we going to do? You know, you're taking away all the comforters."
I'm sure you told her if it got really bad, you were going to put her in the tank to keep it warm.
You know what? This is a good place to pause and do this work shirt giveaway thingy here. So
Do they all come with the name Keith on them?
Yep.
yeah, that's the catch. It's my shirt that's coming off my back that I'm giving away. No, it's
Only
gonna.
person that can win is named Keith. That's the rule.
Yeah, you gotta be
right.
first name's Keith. No, it will be customized to whoever wins this work shirt. But this is actually courtesy of one of my customers as well as a viewer, Dennis. Thank you so much for donating a customized ReefBum work shirt for tonight's giveaway. Dennis also wanted me to give a shout out to his kids, Danielle and Umaya, out of Rancho Cordova, California. Dennis is also donating a second shirt that will be given away in a different episode in the future. So thank you, Dennis, so much for being so kind to donate this to the giveaway for the show. How to enter. The 15th person who contacts me via the contact form on my website, which is reefbum.com/contact. I'll remember to put that in the chat. reefbum.com/contact. So you got to go on the website, put work shirt giveaway in the subject heading, and make sure you include your full name, address, and cell phone number. Now, the cell phone number is really important because that's how you're going to be contacted if you're the winner. I'm going to text you tomorrow and say congrats, but if you don't get back to me by midnight on Thursday, then I'm moving on to the next person. So you got over 24 hours to claim your prize. And so multiple submissions will not count. So don't sit there and just hit the return button 5 times and submit the contact form. See, 1 submission per person, continental U.S. only. And yes, you will have your own name on this work shirt. So 15th person that contacts me via the contact form.
Yeah, I would do it differently.
You would do.
I would say the 15th person to send me a frag will get the shirt.
There you go.
I'm just thinking, Sanjay, that's what I love about you.
See, that's the way you got to do it.
That's the way to do it, Keith.
That would be interesting. That would be God. Who knows what I would get in the mail?
You got to tell them you get a shirt and a hat for the next one. Maybe a pair of shoes.
I should be giving away some frags. I got a ton of frags in my frag tank. So you know. But I was telling you guys, I'm replanting my tanks this week. Well, my Peninsula tank, I've started putting frags into that, and this is like the first time that I've ever started a reef tank. It's a mature reef tank, right? Because I took down all the corals over the last several months, and it's a blank slate. But it's the first time I've ever put frags in a tank all at the same time. I've always started a reef tank, put a few frags in, let them grow out a little bit. You know, you get some bigger mini colonies going, and then you put some more frags in, and you know, it's kind of an evolving process, right? That's sort of like the way people normally do a reef tank is you just kind of add frags over time. But this is kind of like the first time I'm going to be adding like 50, 60, 70 frags or whatever it's going to be within a week, and then just kind of sit back and watch it.
So how did you decide what corals should go back in there?
That's a good question. You know, I had some favorites that I really like a lot. So
Which ones are those?
So you got a lot of those, Sanjay. I think, and Mike, I sent you some. The BC Joker 2.0. Do you still have that one, Sanjay?
I do. That's the purplish one with green polyps, right?
Bright like yellow tips. That
No,
I
don't
gave
think
you
I
that
have
one.
that
I know. I'm pretty sure I
I know, but it could have fallen down or
it
disappeared.
fell through
and
the cracks.
that's the one other problem with a big tank, right? You put a frag somewhere, you forget you put it there, and then you look one day and you go, "Oh, where is that frag?" And I can't find it. Probably fell off.
Another one of my favorites, and this is one that I know I gave you, Sanjay. I'm not sure if I gave this to you, Mike. Is the worldwide coral Cookie Monster, the Florida?
Yeah.
Let me show the picture here. I think of that one. It's a no. This one.
I posted a picture of that
Yeah,
one.
you
the
did.
other day.
It's got the it's got the green coral lights, and it's got the kind of pinkish tips. It's a beautiful beautiful coral. I also have
Gets big fast.
yeah. Well,
So give it space.
yes.
See, that's the other thing. Now that you know your corals, you know the growth form they're going to take.
Right.
And you got a frag, you don't know what it's going to do because
Right.
Exactly. I know what's tabling.
Right? So now you know what it's going to do. Then you got to put it in the right place and let it do its
Because
thing.
you can't. So that's a great point because I've got as you saw firsthand when you came to visit, I had a lot of tabling acros in that tank, and so now knowing which acros, which frags are going to table out, you don't necessarily want to put those, in a spot near the top that might,
block light from everything
exactly,
else.
right. So I'm kind of putting some more of those tabling acros down below, put some branching corals like a PC rainbow, maybe off to the aside or near the top or something. That so it is a it is an art form in terms of being able to put certain frags in certain places and but also knowing which ones are aggressive and which ones are not aggressive. I put the Tyree Purple Monster. I was very I put it sort of close to Mike's pink tip. That because I know that grows kind of fast.
I lost that piece I got from you too. The purple monster.
You did.
Didn't survive.
Yeah, it grows so slowly that anything near it will kill it.
It got engulfed by other stuff.
Yeah.
Right.
And then they get stung, and then it's one of those corals that doesn't recover well from being stung by something else. Some corals can bounce back. Some don't.
Yeah, you had a.
Did you use the same live rock, Keith, when you rebuilt the reef?
Yeah. So
did you change anything else, any equipment or anything?
No, I kept it all the same. So that's that was. This is all the first time I've ever done that. I've always
got sand.
No sand. Yeah. It's cool, right? It's fun to start a tank.
It's always fun to start new tanks.
Yeah, everybody loves a new tank.
But I'm still having problems in the other. Not a big problem, but the 187 gallon tank that I have, I've got this Carib Sea Life Rock in it, and it just seems to be an algae magnet. I'm still getting like some cyano in that tank. Not a lot, but just kind of a pesky amount. I'm getting more bubble algae in that tank and all that sort of thing. And I'm just kind of wondering whether there's phosphates that are leaching out of that rock. It's a very dense rock. It's not porous at all. So it's.
I think that's part of the problem, right? You need porous rock. Because deep inside the cavities, water doesn't flow in that much, and you can get anaerobic bacteria growing in there, and so many things, so many good things can happen.
So I've got some Haitian live rock that I picked up years ago that used to be in that display tank, which is now in a cryptic sump that's plumbed into that whole system. And I'm thinking about swapping out that, Carib Sea live rock for the Haitian live rock, which is not the most porous rock either, but it's more porous than what the life rock is. But that's another thing, right? I mean, in terms of the types of dry rock that are out there. I mean, what do you guys like if you were suggesting to somebody to start a tank with dry rock, which most people do? Marco rock,
First thing I would tell people, you're starting with dry rock, have a lot of patience.
Yeah, figure it's going to take you a year till anything
Okay.
even remotely starts to come around.
It takes a long time for enough colonization to take place on that rock before it reaches the point of being stable.
If you guys had to,
So, I've seen that in Germany when I was there. People were all using ceramic rock in Germany at one time.
Yeah.
And they had the patience. They would like let their tank go for a whole year with just rock in there, with a little few fish in there, and that's it. And lots of algae growing in there.
Yeah.
Okay? Because that's the cycle of things. And they were perfectly fine doing that for a year.
right?
Here, you don't see that.
If you guys were gonna,
What I'm doing that are starting a tank, look for someone that's getting out of the hobby that has old live rock. Get from them. Don't start with
good
dry.
tip.
It'll save you a year.
Well, it could be horrible rock too. It could be loaded with nitrates and phosphates and God knows what.
I tell them, look at your tank when it was high nitrates and phosphates, and it can work, and that everyone believes me.
I tell you, I started my Peninsula tank with the KP Aquatics live rock. I got it shipped in water. They farmed that rock in the Keys, and it came shipped in water. And man, my tank just hit the ground running.
Yeah.
I mean, there was like everything was on that rock.
Even the old Fiji rock we used to get, or other rock that used to come in, even those things were dying on those things. It still had so much life and bacteria in there that your tanks were in a whole different state a month after putting in that live rock than they would be a month after putting in dead rock.
Right.
But even if you put in a few pieces of live rock with your dead rock, it still takes a long time to colonize things.
I basically wait until you start to see sponges colonizing. I don't think it's really stable until sponges start to take off. But that would be an interesting experiment. Try to get some live rock from Fiji or Indo or wherever and do an aquabiomics test on that to see what bacteria come off of each type of live rock. See if it's the same or how different it is. And compare that with like 1-year-old dead rock in a tank. See what the differences are. Because I bet it would be mine.
I think he did that. Well, I don't know about fresh live rock. But he did comparisons of tanks set up with dead rock versus live rock.
Oh, he does?
Yeah, I think I saw that in his presentation, or it may have even been on his website.
Okay.
Yeah, he definitely has done that. Yeah.
Do you guys think that the predominant use of dry rock in the hobby these days is potentially one reason why we're seeing more issues with tanks in terms of the whole RTN, STN, and people trying to gravitate towards use of the antibiotics, or do you think that's just kind of a thing that's more of a social media thing, or it's?
I think it's a lack of patience thing. You have to know what you're starting with. You're starting with dead stuff.
Yeah.
Right.
There's no biome. You have
those
a
reef
biome zero,
tanks,
and then you have to tailor it.
And it takes a while for that rock to become stable enough. Right? Now, do people wait till they get coralline algae growing on it before they put anything in there?
No.
That's what I tell people. You want to wait? Once you start seeing coralline algae growing on your dead rock, that's probably the right point in time to start adding in stuff you want to add.
Rich Colombo
How much
says,
do you stress telling people to add different bacteria to dead rock? Because that's the other thing, that they add one, but we don't know what's in one. I mean, when I tell people to do it, I said, get as many different kinds as you can and add it to try and get as diverse a population of bacteria as you can, not knowing what they're adding. I realize it's a crapshoot.
Nothing beats getting either water from somebody else's tank, because there's enough of those bacteria in the water, right? Aquabiomics has shown that, right? Get the water if you don't want to get their rock or sand from them, just the water. I think people are too afraid of pathogens. They're too afraid of a lot of these things. But then in the end, they just end up with all these struggles and get out of the hobby.
Well, that's one of the interesting things is if you look at the some of the aquabiomics tests that shows that it has Vibrio and it has other pathogenic bacteria, and they're basically benign, but something seems to cause them to trigger where they suddenly become pathogenic. The question is, what is the cause of having bacteria there that are basically benign or in check, and all of a sudden they go crazy and start bothering your corals? I mean, that's one of the things we have to start get a better understanding of, because we still don't understand what's the trigger point.
Yeah, I mean, you know, we sit around, we get a cold.
Yeah.
We're healthy, but we still get a cold, right? So somehow those viruses are able to go past our immune system. Maybe the corals have the same kind of a thing. They're healthy, they can fight off some of these things. And if they're not healthy and stressed, then they don't have the ability to fight off. Same thing with fish diseases too, you know. It's like, you're a healthy fish. I'm sure there's still ink in my tank. I don't see it on any fish, you know, but I'm sure it's there.
But you don't add fish very often, so there's no new stressor put a new kid in school, because that's
right.
Yeah.
You put a new kid in school in there, and that fish will get ick.
Yep.
Where did that come from? It's there in my tank somehow. It's there.
No, you can run them through quarantine.
The rest of my fish are fine.
You can run them through quarantine and treat them with everything. They're as crystal clean as you could possibly imagine. You stick them in a tank. 4 days later, they're covered with ick, and then they start spreading it around. You have to scoop them out and go, why did you do this? Why did you stress everything in the tank just adding one stupid fish?
I mean, I have the most notorious fish for ick, the Achilles tang. Okay? And I've had him for lots of years. There'll be times where it goes through, it's got nothing on him. And then suddenly there'll be some times when I'll see some ick on it. And I go, where did that come from? And then it goes away. The other fish don't get it. You know? And even the fish that had it is perfectly fine. I've had that fish for years now. I think it's the same thing with corals. You know, stress them, and there's enough opportunistic things that can attack them. Right? And we don't know enough. We do not know enough about the whole interaction between bacteria, the zooxanthellae, the corals themselves, and then the environment on top of it.
And the other pests that are in the tank. Like you and I have both had acro-eating flatworms, but they were never as problematic as other people have. They're always probably still in our tanks to some extent, but they're under control and managed for the most part. They never like wipe out a whole coral.
I do not see any, and I don't know where they went.
You don't know where they went? Are your wrasses eating them, or are your...
Well, I'm betting those orange spotted fowlfish eat just about anything that goes around the corals. And you've had those now. I was looking through pictures yesterday. You've had those for over 4.5 years.
Yeah, I finally lost one.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, I lost the female.
Are those fowlfish, and I guess your colonies are so big that it doesn't matter if they pick.
No, they don't pick.
Yeah, they're picking all the time. I don't care about polyp extension in the daytime. Right? I mean, there's no polyp extension. What's the big deal? The corals are still growing.
Yeah, but they pick, but we didn't see any damage. We sat and watched.
There's no damage.
They don't damage anything that they pick at.
When I had these butterflies, you could see the damage.
Yeah. Bannerfish too. You can see the damage right away. They just pick at the same spot. The fowlfish go all around the tank and take turns.
Fowlfish, you don't see damage at all.
No. I have 3 in my tank. You don't ever see any damage. They just flit around. I mean, it's we're scared of some things that we don't understand. I mean, if you look at the mouth of the butterfly fish, it was like this. It was designed for plucking polyps. You look at the mouth of a fowlfish, it's like a molly. It's designed for literally kissing the corals. It's not designed for polyp extraction.
I mean, I haven't seen red bugs in my tank anymore.
You had them and you didn't treat for them?
Oh, I never did anything with red bug. I mean, once in a while I've treated them with interceptor, only because, you know, sometimes I trade with people and people get really touchy about these things. I would treat them, right? And I haven't treated in a long time, and I don't see them. Right? For that, I'm almost convinced it might be the flatfish. Yeah.
Because if you watch them, they literally eat 24/7. eat the entire time.
What's
They're the most eating fish I've ever seen.
it's interesting about what they eat, right? I brought in a bright green Abrolensis, and I put it in my tank. They knew right away it's a new coral. The two of them kept at that coral for a full hour. They wouldn't leave it alone, right? And 20 minutes later, I was watching my tank, and there's this green, slimy poop coming out of them. So they did eat something off that coral. They ate some of the pigments off the coral because they did come out in their poop, right? So as they were eating the mucus or whatever they were eating, they were also getting some of the green coloration from the coral. But you look at the coral, and the only thing you see is that polyps pulled in. You don't see any bite marks. You don't see any of that. Right? So yeah, I can go at night with a flashlight, and all the polyps are out on every single coral.
Yeah, you know, they're
That's when I feed the tank. When all the polyps are out at night, and I go, okay, it's a good time to throw some food in there.
Yeah.
And what's the latest in terms of coral food that you're using there, Sanjay?
I've been using
Benefits.
Benefits for a while. I've been using Reefroids. Then, like I said, I use this frozen rotifers. And then when I'm breeding clownfish, I have fresh rotifers I dump in there. And then as I'm raising clownfish, I always have Artemia. I'll dump Artemia in there all the time.
You convinced me, Sanjay, to stop doing the live phyto.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, everything that I've seen showed that corals really don't eat phyto.
No, the bacteria that the corals eat may eat the phyto. But I mean, I raised it for a year, and one, it was a pain in the ass to try and keep crashing, and I was raising that and live rotifers at the same time, and that became like a full-time job. And then I said, you know what? It's not worth a full-time job for me doing this. No one's paying me enough money, and I didn't see anything dramatic happen.
You don't see the benefit. You don't see the benefit.
Did you see your pods increase?
I grew tube worms in every.
Yeah, the pods will increase for sure.
You will grow tube
You'll
worms
see an
out
increase in your pod
years if you
population.
feed phytoplankton every day. They love phytoplankton.
Yeah, pods will definitely, you'll see an increase in pod population. And when feeding all these small particulate foods, you'll see an increase in your sponge population.
Yeah.
You know, that's one of the ways I go, okay, tank's doing really good. Lots of sponges are growing. There's enough particulate food available to the sponges and hopefully to the corals too if they need it. See, I don't run any mechanical filtration on my tank. I don't. No socks, none of that stuff. Just a skimmer.
Yeah, I've altered my so I have the Royal Exclusive Dream Box, and there's 10 nylon filter socks, and what I've done now is I've basically I've used the largest mesh socks for all of those 10 filter socks. So pretty much what I'm trying to do is just prevent any debris that's coming from the display tank from entering the sump, or pods from getting in and messing with stuff. So it's really because it's a pain in the ass to clean the socks.
Yeah.
I was having to clean the socks twice a week.
Well, you can get one of those mechanical filters, the roller socks,
Those are good unless you have a dirty tank. Then they get dirty so fast, you're changing the rolls once a week.
I mean, I've got so much detritus in my tank already. I'm like, I'm not, who cares? Right? Plus, again, the way I look at it, if there's small particles floating around, that's food for somebody or something.
Yeah.
Right?
I think we always get this question, Mike, when you're on. John Wright, what benefits does Mike think of adding Miracle Mud? Because I have it in my sump.
Every time. I think it's a great breeding ground for amphipods and copepods and weird worms and other things. I mean, when you take it out to change it, you're amazed by how much stuff is living in it. And two, I think it really slow releases a bunch of trace elements. So I have used it now since 1997. It's on all my tanks. I've never had a problem with it. The only problem you'll have with it, if your power does go out and you have a thick bed of it, it will go anoxic very quickly and can cause problems that way. But as long as you have flow going across it, and you want to have amphipods and copepods, I mean, where I have it and it feeds into the tank, I mean, I have mandarins, ruby reds, dragonettes, a bunch of fish that only eat that. By having another source or a refugium for growing that stuff, I keep those guys fed. So, I mean, that's the main reason I believe that it works. I don't use the Clerpa on anymore because it just became a pain. I do on this soft coral tank, just because it's easier on this tank to manage. But on my big tank, I just have the mud. I don't have the Clerpa growing. So I've, like I said, I've been using it since 1997.
I use it on my soft coral tank because that's a bare bottom tank. And, you know, a new one for me. I usually never did bare bottom tanks. And I'm looking at it going, I need surface area for stuff to grow, bacteria and other things. So actually, I put it in trays.
Yeah, mine's in trays as well. You can
each tray,
lift it out, put it back.
And I put 2 trays in my sump. And they're just there. And, you know, I'll change it once a year. And at least what I care about is the surface area for stuff to grow on.
Yeah.
Right? In a bare bottom tank, you don't have that. But sand, incredible amount of surface area. Every particle of sand has surface area for bacteria to grow on.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sand is good, and sometimes sand can be a pain to keep, but for the most part, it's a good thing.
I think it's good.
Yeah.
I like it. I like the look of the tank with the sand.
Yeah. The soft coral tank has sand. The big tank doesn't have sand.
Yeah, I find it to be tough if you want to just, well, I mean, Sanjay, you got an SPS dominant tank, but it's, you know, when you have a lot of flow, it can be a challenge to keep the sand in spots.
Yeah. Just so you do what I did. Turn on the pumps, let the sand fly around. It'll land wherever it's not going to move. And then the empty spots, put coarser sand. I just actually started putting reef rubble, you know, the reef bones that I throw in my calcium reactor, right? I would just take those and create a little sand bed with that. So you got coarse sand bed, you got fine sand bed, you got the benefit of everything.
Yeah, and you know, aesthetically it is pleasing.
Yeah.
Well, guys, I think we're going to wrap it. Any final thoughts before we sign off tonight?
We're looking forward to kicking Julian's and Charles' butt.
Well,
and also, happy birthday to Julian. It's his birthday, so everyone out there should wish him
happy birthday, Julian. And happy birthday to Keith. It was his birthday yesterday.
We were going to sing happy birthday to you, Keith, and you told us not to.
Well, you know, you still can if you want to. I mean, but I don't think you want to. But
the moment's passed, Keith. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Well, so, like I said, lots of interesting stuff going on in the hobby throughout. I'm looking forward. I'm starting to write for Polo Reef. You're one of your new advertisers. I have an article coming out on renting clams that will come out this week.
Renting clams.
Yeah, why we don't keep them, we just rent them.
I mean, kill them.
Yeah, pretty much. But in researching this, I found out there's a lot of reasons. Clams are a lot tougher than corals for a lot of reasons. They're a much more complex organism, and we tend not to think of them that way.
It's an afterthought. People, I like the clam, I put it in my tank.
Yeah,
but they require.
That's not a smart
I think
way
they
to keep
require
clams.
slightly different conditions and a little more attention.
I don't know. All I know is, like, I used to keep clams no problem years ago, and these days I don't even attempt it anymore.
It'll be like Gunyapora. It'll come back, and you know you'll be never going to kill a clam again.
No, but I found the magic of clams as a freshwater dip, which I never thought of for clams. That they can tolerate 30 minutes in freshwater, and that basically kills a lot of the pathogens.
But is it the pathogens that are killing the clams?
Yeah, like
Did they die after 3
read the article.
years?
There's a zillion different factors that can kill clams.
So exactly right. You can't pick one, right?
No, there isn't.
If it's a clam that's been in your tank for years and years and it dies,
I know.
it's probably not the pathogens that are killing it.
No. And then, because there could be 5 other things. That's what's in the article. That's why I write articles, Sanjay. I quit doing this telepathy. I actually write things.
Well, you talk to me before you write the article, so you
I
can
did
grab my
talk to you.
knowledge and put it in the articles.
You had the spawnosis were beautiful when they were started spawning, which can either be good or showing that they were stressed, and then poof, they were gone.
I mean, spawning takes a lot of energy out of things.
That's a big project.
They're all
Clam
big
spawning in a tank, they go through a lot of stress.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially when they're not, again, not getting enough food.
Well,
Not enough light is one of the other biggest causes.
I'm going to be looking forward to that article there, Mike, because I want to try to understand what's going on.
I may even try them again.
Geigas have a tendency to live long.
No, you still have
Get
that
a
Geigas in your tank that's probably 6 or 7 years old.
Yeah.
I've got it. I've got it.
It was 2 inches
That's
when
a
I got
picture
it.
of it right
Yeah,
there.
I know.
Yeah.
Beautiful clam. But you also,
There's a picture in the article tomorrow.
you got some maximas that are in the shadow of that Geigas.
And yeah, those are about 6 months old.
Hopefully they'll make it to 12 months.
We'll see. We'll see. There's
Well,
one
read the
maxima and
article,
one
that'll help you
spumosa.
keep them longer.
One maxima and one spumosa.
All right. Well, listen, guys, I appreciate you, and yes, we'll put a date in the calendar once we kind of figure out what works for the four of you for that.
Yeah, this will be like herding cats, Keith. You know that.
I'll believe you me. But thanks, guys, again for being on the live stream. I also want to thank my sponsors one more time, Polo Reef. Make sure to check out Polo Reef's new YouTube video that drops this Friday. In the new Polo University episode, Andrew dives deeper into the details of Vic and marine velvet. In this instructional and practice video, you'll learn what Polo Reef does to address these diseases. Make sure to subscribe to their channel at Polo Reef for video drop notifications. Champion Lighting and Supply. Besides being a place for hobbyists to purchase saltwater aquarium supplies, Champion Lighting is also a wholesale distributor for many popular brands. If you own an aquarium store or an aquarium service company, contact Champion Lighting through their website at championlighting.com to set up a wholesale account. GHL, I use all the GHL products, dosers, Proflux 4 controllers, Mitra lights, Cage Director. They produce high-quality German-engineered products. For more information or to purchase their stuff, you can visit aquariumcomputer.com/USA. You could also check out my website. Big thank you to Paul, who's also the moderator as well as the president of the Boston Reefer Society. Please join and support your local reefing clubs. They are so important to this hobby. Also want to let you know that all episodes of Rappin With ReefBum are available as podcasts on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, and Amazon. My next Rappin With ReefBum next Tuesday, May 7th. My guest will be Todd Gardner. So that'll be a great show. You can check out all the full upcoming schedule of guests on reefbum.com under the YouTube section. Until next time, be safe and be well.